Can't hear anything. Is it my microphone? Okay. So we'll start by leveraging writing test cases and using test cases against our Flutter application. Of course, it's not just only for Flutter. We can look into other integrations as well, like any other frameworks that we have done. This kind of thing, like it can be a mobile application, it can be web application. Either way, when you are working with your code, it's always mandatory to write test cases against it. Okay, the code that we are writing, we need to make sure that our code, which we have written, is something that we can be assured that it's gonna stay and work even though we do changes to our code or any features that we add. So for example, it's common to work as a team within a software project. So anyone who is coming to the team, or anyone who is adding new features, fixing a bug, it's quite common. I might need to work with someone else code. Okay, so it's quite common that I would do changes, and uh, quite oftenly what happens is, if the code is like really messy and it is not like really well written, what happens is I might fix what the problem in hand, but I might fix uh, I might fix the problem in hand, but I might break something that is already been working. Okay, so the bug is fixed. Okay, the task that I had is completed, but it completely destroys something in somewhere else. Okay, that quite oftenly happens. So in order to get rid of these kind of problems, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we write uh, test cases or testing in order to get these things completely, or we need to write test cases in order to make sure that our uh, our feature additions, our changes that we have done is not affecting the prior task or prior code that we have written. Okay, so writing test cases ensure that the code that we have written is not going to break anything else. And there is a portion of there are like different type of tests that we need to write, including unit test, integration test, and end-to-end test. So it's your duty to find out about test pyramids, okay, and have a look around test pyramids, how it works, and how test pyramids is distributing the test cases among a project. Okay, I'm not gonna explain it to you guys, but it's gonna be a very important question in your papers. Okay, so make sure you know about testing pyramid, what are the proportion and everything. I'm not gonna explain, but definitely it's gonna be in your paper. So in that scenario, do your research on that, test pyramids. But eventually, it will be boiled down to three of main test cases to be written. The first one, it would be unit test. So this is like the most preliminary test that we need to write. As a programmer, as a developer, you should be able to write unit test to validate your code. So we'll start writing unit test. It will validate our code that we have written, and we can say, okay, our business logic, what we have written, is working. And we have component tests. So sometimes we have integration tests, depending on what the project is. So it's basically going to be checking upon a UI component that we have written, whether it is doing okay, the component as a whole is working as expected. or sometimes we need to write a reintegration test, and if we are writing multiple smaller code section, we will try to incorporate those two smaller section and work as one singular work of unit, and we check whether it is working as expected. And the final type of testing would be end-to-end test. So we will have end-to-end test um, at the last type of test that we would do. And by given the nature of end-to-end test, it's like gonna be the most uh, easy to write but hard to execute kind of test. Okay, it's gonna be easy to write in a scenario. The most of the time when we are testing unit test, it's involved much of coding knowledge is needed. Sometimes we need to know the logic behind it, and we should be able to change those things. But in end-to-end test, we'll be just looking around the flows, paths that we can take within an application. Then we will see whether okay, that is working as expected. And we need to check on a few of the things that we'll be checking around that okay, the application is not breaking after a few changes that we have done. So each and every time when we are doing a deployment, what we do is we run all those test cases and make sure nothing has broken since we have done changes to our application. So that is like the expectation of this. So the next thing that we would um, do is write test cases based on widgets. Okay, so we'll be testing with widget stacks, and we'll do some testing parts in here and there. Okay, um, but remember, there are different ways of testing applications. In this section, we'll be talking about leveraging not unit test, but integration test as a whole. Okay, so it's gonna be end-to-end test. The way we write end-to-end test is different from platform to platform, because they have a different way of interacting with the application, but we'll see how we can leverage those things within the application. Okay, so it's quite often that when we write test cases, we need to have some sort of way to execute these test codes. Okay, so testing is done not only by a simple um, um, set of application. We need to set up the tests. Okay, so we need to make sure that our testing environment is set up and it is working as expected. Otherwise, what will happen is we'll be in trouble unless this testing environment is set up properly. So luckily, when we are working with applications like Flutter application in this scenario, it's quite common to have testing environments set up for us. Okay, so if you look at the application that we have set up so far, we'll be getting the application pre-set up for our use case, so we don't have to set up test environments and everything. So the most easiest way that you can find your test cases is when you look at the source directory of your project, you will find a directory called test in here, and by default it has a widget test right now. Probably it should be break by now. just because we have changed a lot in there. So now it should be broken, and it shouldn't be it shouldn't be working as expected. Uh, that's why. Okay, so we'll look at this test case and try to identify what are the necessary things in order to write a test case. Then we will write a working test case in our scenario and see whether it is working. So we have this by default widget test. It should be working with the incremental counter that we had in our application. If you go to the pages, home dot, I think main dot dart. So we have this default application. Okay, this is the default application. We can just uncomment and see whether it is doing the exact thing in our application. So we have the our dummy class. We don't need that. We will just run my app. Okay, so basically what I have done is I have undo what we have done so far, and the demo application is on. Okay, so I'll run this application. Radian, yes. Let's run it. It's going to be launching on Chrome. It doesn't matter. Since this is Flutter, you can have it running in Android or even with Flutter. Let me open up the Android Studio and the what we call. I don't think we need Android Studio. Okay. So assume this is our mobile application. Okay, so you don't have to. I don't have to like pump up my application itself. Okay, so we have our Chrome, and we have our Chrome as well as our Dart application. Sorry, the Chrome preview. So think this is the same as the same application as what we have in Flutter, but this is in desktop mode. That's the only difference. Can I move it further now? Okay. So we have this application, which is basically, if we click on this, it's gonna increment the number of times that we press on it. This is the basic application. So when we are writing a component test, or when we are writing testing as for this whole application, we do not need to know about the things that is going around the source code of this. Okay, we do not want to know what's going on, what sort of application is we have written, whether it is a stateful application, whether it's a state application. No, none of these things matter. We just be looking at what we can see within the screen, and we assume that's the sort of things we'll be testing out. Okay, we don't have to know about anything underlying, whether we are using anything special. No, we just need to test. The test scenario is when we write this increment, whether it's incrementing correctly. That is the only thing that we'll be testing around. So in order to do that, there's this by default test, the widget test that we have written. Okay, so let's try to run this. So easily to run this test case, if you are using VS Code and install Dart plugin within your application, you have this play button in here. So it says click to run test, right click to for more option. I can run test, I can debug test. Let's see how these things are going to be handling debugging. Okay, right now we'll just run the test and see whether it is working or not. So let me run the test. So once I run this test, you guys can see that the test results is waiting on us, and it is taking quite a little bit time. And you can see that there are like check marks, which indicates that the test that we have written is working perfectly. Okay, so these tests are working perfectly. Okay, we'll get to this test, and right now it's just executed. Okay, we don't know what is happening, we don't know what's going on. What I'll do is I'll do a little change in here. Okay, I'll do a little change. So I have this add button over here. What I'm going to do is, in my main class, I will go and change the add button. You have the icon. Rather than having add, I will add it as home. Okay, so I change the um, icon to home. Okay, earlier it was like the plus sign. Now it should should be represent like a home sign over here. So let's see the Flutter hot reloading. It took a little bit since it is first time. Now you guys can see it is turned into home. So that is the change that we did. Okay, so some reason we want to change that icon, so we just change it. Okay, and again what we are going to do is we're going to come for our Flutter test, and we will try to execute it once again. Okay, now you guys can see it is giving us errors. Okay, so we have written our test, we have written our unit, in this scenario the component test, or we can say integration test, for some certain parameters or certain code that we have written within the application. Okay, so we have certain things that we have set in place. Based on that, we have written tests. Now all of a sudden someone comes and uh, change the business logic. In this scenario, I just change it to home. It can be accidental, or sometimes it can be, somebody thinks, okay, it should be on home screen. Better than having add icon, we will change it to home. That would make more sense. Somebody is doing that. Any reason, okay, for any reason that we have done, when we are executing test, when we are trying to executing the test scenario or test case that is associated with this code, is all together now failing. Okay, the test is failing. In that scenario, we assume that, okay, the change that we have done, is not acceptable. Okay, the change that we have done, it is not acceptable given with the existing test scenarios. Okay, so we have done a change and we are breaking the code. Okay, so the test case validation part, it says, hey, the change that you have done is against the usage, against what we are supposed to have. Okay, it is not a valid change that you have done. It is breaking somewhere in the somewhere, and it is not the expected behavior. So in this scenario, of course, it is like a minor thing. But believe me, when we are working in huge applications, a small change might introduce a lot of bugs, okay, a lot of changes that we are doing. Okay, so this is just like a simple demonstration. In here, we can see that it's completely breaking the test case. So we can do two things in a scenario like where our test, the test that we have written is failing. If they are failing, we can do two things. First thing, we need to check why it is failing, the main reason why it is failing. If the failing test case is violating with our existing code, violating our existing requirement, then we need to find out a different way or different solution for our code to be working. Say, for example, in when we are when we are doing our test cases, the code or the fix that we have introduced is conflicting with one of the existing logics that we had, then of course our logic, the thing that we implemented within the code, is not a valid one. Okay, the valid, it might be valid for your case, okay, it might be for your inputs, but it might break someone else's code. Okay, so we need to rethink about our solution. Okay, even though the code is fixing my bug, it is producing another bug in somewhere else. So the solution that I have put is somewhat partially wrong. Okay, the solution is partially wrong. So what I have to do is I need to figure out, okay, there are other use cases. The fix I did should not interfere with others. Then I have to find a better way to make sure that the code is working as expected. The code is working with the existing logics as well as my new addition to it. So I might need to rethink the solution that I have provided. I might recode. I need to find another solution. Maybe I need to take a different path or different algorithm to solve this. Okay. So the first thing that we can do, change our own code. Okay, we need to change our own code in order to make sure the existing code does not break. But the second option that we have is we might have some sort of a requirement change. Okay, so we have written a test case which was valid for the existing use case, but since a new requirement the new requirement require that change, and when we are testing out, the test was written for the old requirement that we had. Okay, the old requirement, the test case was written to satisfy the old requirement. Now the requirement has changed. The requirement has new things coming in. So in a scenario like that, what we need to do is we need to make sure the test case is updated. The test case should be updated, and that that test case is first of all, we need to make sure that the change request that we did is a valid one. Okay, and if the change request is completely valid, the requirement has changed. So in that scenario, we need to change the test case. Okay, so there are two scenarios when a test case fails. First, we need to, the first case is our logic was wrong. So we need to fix, or we need to find an alternative way to get the logic correct so it can pass all the test cases. The other way around is with the requirement has changed, so the test case is no longer valid. We need to update the test case and get it correct. So those are the two options we have when the test case is failing. Okay, there might be uh, um, code changes that is happen to occur in this count of change. So there might be extreme cases where none of those two are valid. Okay, so but most of the time when we are working with failing test cases like this, it's something to do, either the logic is wrong, either the test case is no longer valid. So we need to make sure to choose the correct path. In this scenario, in particular in this scenario, I assume that my logic is correct by the requirement has changed. Okay, earlier it was the add button, it was there. Now the requirement has changed. I assume that requirement has changed to not to have a plus sign, but have a home sign. So I need to make and look at this test case, and probably I would think, okay, it is not a logical error. Simply, I just change an icon, nothing else. So it's probably not something to do with the logic itself, but it to do with the requirement of the test case was written on. So I need to come here and validate my test case. Validate my test case and see the test case is really testing out, or the test case is doing, or the test case should be updated for some reason. Okay, so I need to make sure that I know the test case, why it is failing, I need to figure out whether it is a logical change or a test case change. So since I haven't done any logical change, this is something to do with the test itself. Okay, so before we dive into this section, we will go through um, some of these features that you will find within this test scenario. Okay, so we will be looking at what are the basic things that we need to do in order to get into testing, and what we need to know uh, um, about setting these things up and everything that we know for sure. Okay. Uh, so first thing, in order to make sure we are capable of running tests, making test cases valid, we have to go to our pub spec, and under dev dependencies. Okay, so these are like development dependencies. That means, I think we talked about this in much more detail. Right now, these dependencies, the libraries that we'll be using under dev dependencies, only available while we are developing the application. Once it's production, once we are rolling out this into open public, it won't be included within the application. It will be just, it will be like um, it will be just gone from the source code itself. Okay, these are like test-based dependencies, so nothing we need to worry about. Okay, so the dependency that we are working is Flutter test. Okay, the SDK Flutter. So these lines should be in here. Okay, so Flutter dependencies, Flutter test dependencies is something that should be in this pub spec YAML file. If for some reason someone removed it or the default generated, it's highly unlikely this not to have within the application, but for some reason this is not there. This is the first thing that you need to make sure that you are able of doing widget test or Flutter based test right on here. So make sure this Flutter test is available and you can work with that. Okay. All right. We have created test cases. Sorry, we have created a UI in our scenario. We'll use the default one that we had, which is like simply this UI that we have. And next thing that we need to do is we'll be discussing the test in this scenario. So we need like a main method. So that's indicating, okay, this is the starting point of our application. So when we are running in test cases, so whatever the test cases that we run, we should put under the main method. So some sort of way of like run app method is running on the main method on the Dart. So it's indicating like starting point for our application. So in this scenario, we have this void main method, which indicates it's going to be the starting point. So another thing that we will be seeing in here, this test widget function. Okay, so this is like the test widget function that we will be using. This function is coming from Flutter test. Yes, I think this, yes. Which is coming from Flutter underscore test. That's why I meant the dependencies should be there. If you are missing dependencies, make sure those dependencies are there. So we use Flutter underscore test to import this test widget function. So this is a function, or this function help us at least with testing out widgets that we have. Okay, so you guys can remember in Flutter, what we always say is everything is a widget. Okay, so almost everything is a widget. So we are using this test widgets function, so we can test multiple widgets within our application. And next thing is that we need to do Next thing that we need to do is create an instance of the widget that we are about to test. We need to create an instance of the app of the widget that we'll be creating. Okay, so we'll be testing out the my app widget, if you guys can remember, within our main application. So the my application is a stateless widget which contains this material app, what you see in here. And within this material app, we have a home, which is a material home page. And within the home page, it's going to be a stateful widget. In the stateful widget, we'll be having a simple scaffold with an app bar, background color, and body of having everything centered around here. And we have a floating action button. When we click on it, it will increment the count that we have in here. So the root of our application, is the my app widget. Okay, since it is a stateful or stateless widget, our goal is to test out my app. Okay, this widget is the one what we are trying to get to test around. Okay, so we need to create this instance. So right now, if I want to execute this, if I want to run this application in Flutter engine or wherever, I need to call this run app method. The run app method would basically, what it do is it will load our Flutter application in Flutter engine, and it will execute on either Android, iOS, or whatever sorry, whatever the underlying platform is. Okay, right now we can't when you are writing test cases, okay, we can't expect to run this application in a real device. So that is a different kind of test. Okay, we are going to be testing the widget and widget itself. We are not going to run this in an application, and we are not going to go along the flows and everything. We will be just testing out this widget. Okay, so when you are doing this integration test or the widget test that we are about to do, we should not depend on any running environment. Okay, especially on the Dart engine, it's better to keep off from our Dart engine as much as possible. So we do not want to test this application in a way that we are not interacting with the underlying host. Okay, so that is number one. So the run app method would simply run this application, but we are not able to run in a real device or any other place. So what we need to do is we need to create this widget and test it. Okay, so we need to create this widget and test it. So how do we create the widget without like depending on something like a runtime environment? Okay, or something like without deploying it in some sort of application. So in here we will be using tester, the pump widget method. Okay, so within the tester, we have a method called pump widget. Okay, so the pump widget, what it would do is it basically create this widget, my app widget in this scenario, and it will trigger a frame. Okay, that means by only looking at or by only creating the widget, creating the app widget, it does not render out the things that we need. If you guys can remember, in stateless widget or stateful widget, we should be calling the build method in order to render the UI. Okay, so we need to call the build method. Once we call the build method, we will be having the rendered output. So right now, what it does is it does not have the build method right after we create this my app widget. It is not gonna be rendering any UIs, and it is not going to be rendering anything. So we need to make sure we have created the widget, and we are executing the first frame. Okay, we are making the application come to life. The build method is called once, and it is up and ready to test. Okay, so that's why we are using pump widget method. Okay, the pump widget method, what it do is it will create the widget and trigger a frame render. That means a build method is called. So only that way the widget is created and rendered out. Okay, so it's gonna take a little bit of time. It's gonna load everything, and it's gonna render the first frame and all those things. So that's why we need this await keyword. That means it's saying it's gonna be a promise. That means it's gonna run on the background a little bit. So we have to await until that asynchronous task is done. Okay, so this is not going to be a synchronous task. Creating widget, rendering the first frame, it will take some time. So that's why we need to await a little bit. Okay, so we will be letting um, we'll be waiting a little bit. So the next thing, um, the next thing that we need to do is we need to validate the initial state. We need to validate the initial state. So if I go to the initial state of this application, okay, if I go to the initial state of the application, now take a look what we can see in this application. So we love coding in Dart. You have pushed the button this many times and it shows 0, and we have a button in here. Okay, so the initial state at the starting of our application, we can expect few things. For the first time, we can expect few things. What are the things we can expect? We can expect text having we love coding in Dart. We can expect you have pushed the button this many times. We can expect 0. Okay, and we can expect a button with an home icon. Okay, so we need to be aware what are the things that we'll be taking forward, what are the things that we will be doing as we progress. So in this scenario, my test scenario is, while I'll click on this button, when I click on this button, what should happen is the counter that we have in here, the counter that we have in here should be incremented. Okay, it should be incremented. Okay, so that is my expectation. My expectation is when I click on this, it should be uh, incremented. The value should be incremented. Okay, so at the initial time, what should I expect is the value of this variable, the value of this widget in this scenario, this the text that we have. So if I look into my code once again to make remind of what we have. So within the application, it's not this one, main dot. Okay. So yeah, within the application, we have a text view, and the text view by default, it is having 0. And there is another text view which you have pushed this button this many times. So we have two text fields. One, it is showing the counter. The other one is showing the text, this static text. Okay. So what I can do is at the initial stage, when we create and render the first frame, I can expect a text field with value 0 on it. Okay, I can expect a text field with the value of 0. Okay, so that is the test case that we'll be doing, or we'll be evaluating in this scenario. To evaluate that test scenario, in Flutter testing, we have something called expect. Okay, so the expect is something, or something like in other frameworks you have assertions, you call these equals, whatever the name is. In this scenario, we are expecting something to be we are expecting some value to be matching to something else. Okay, so in this scenario, since we are testing widgets, what we will do is we will test our widgets based on the values that we can see. Okay, so what we are going to do is we will be testing out whether we can find a text view with 0. Okay, remember the key words: a single text view with the value of 0. Okay, so this is how we're going to write that test scenario. We expect find a text field containing value 0 and find one widget. So find one widget uh, is a method that is something coming out of the matcher class. That means it the find text would be in here. The find text would be a method for a method, a find a test. Sorry, the find is a common finder. That means we can find any widget within this component, or within the my widget we have. So we use this find command, or find what we can do is what we call this is a matcher. We will find a text field containing value 0, and there should be only one widget out of it. Okay, so this will find any text widget containing value 0, but we are expecting that should to be only one widget. That means there shouldn't be any any more widgets rather than 0. Okay, so our test case is to find a text view containing value 0, and it should be only one widget. Okay, so that is our expectation. So let me repeat once again. So we expect to find a text field which contains value 0. Okay, and it should be only find one widget. So this is the right hand side of the operation. This is the left side of the operation. Okay, so there is no like equal sign in this scenario, but it basically means in this scenario, find a text view containing text view with I will say text rather than text view, I will say text widget with text equal to 0, and there should be only one widget. Okay, so basically we are writing this test case to elaborate this scenario. Okay, find a text widget with text equal to 0, 0 in the sense not 0 value, 0 as a string, and there should be only one widget. Okay, that's the test case. So if I want to find more than one widget, there are other ways that we can do, like find widgets, find n number of widgets, find at least n number of widgets. This kind of things we can use to find any other remaining widget. But in our test scenario, when we are testing out, we should have only one widget that containing value 0. Okay, at least the text 0 in it. Okay, so remember, this is going to find widgets. Okay, so we have to be careful how many widgets that we are to find. So at the same time, we are testing this one. We expect to find a widget containing text1 and finds nothing. That means there shouldn't be a text field which containing value 1. Okay, so that is our test case. We can't have any text field containing value 1. If we have that, then that is also wrong. So remember, this is a way of looking into our application, without looking at the code. Okay, so we do not normally, when we write these kind of tests, we normally don't look at the code at that time. Okay, so we, at the initial stage, we expect this, but when we click on it, we expect something else. So initial stage, we expect to find a widget containing 0, and there should be only one widget. And at the same time, we expect to find a widget. We expect to find no widgets. Okay, find nothing in the sense we are expecting no widgets with the text 1. Okay, so you guys get the idea. First one is what we call a positive test case. That means we are testing out the obvious test case that we can see, the positive scenario in this case. And we are also testing one negative scenario. That means we are not expecting to find, we find nothing. We are not expecting to find a text view which containing value 1. Okay, so those are the two things that we expect from our first set of trials. Okay, so any questions up until this? The pumper and the expectation for the first round. Okay, remember we have only executed only one set of drawings. Okay, we draw once. Okay, with the pump widget method, we are only we are pumping this widget. That means we are creating this widget and rendering the first view. So the first view ideally should be this. Okay, to visualize it at least. Okay, so at the first glance, we are expecting a text view with 0, and we are expecting no widgets with containing value 1. Understood? Anyone have any questions? Raise your hand if you have. I have a question on that matter. Okay, good. Now what we're going to do is we'll be evaluating the next thing. Okay, so next thing what we're going to do is we will be clicking on this button. Okay, we will be clicking on this fab icon. Okay, and now what we can do is, now you guys can see it is rendering out the UI once again. The UI is rendered out. Now what we need to do is we need to test once again. Once we click only once, if we click only once, okay, and the widgets that we see, the text that we see in the widgets are going to be changed. Okay, earlier it was 0, now it is 1. Okay, now we need to make sure once we clicked on it, once we click on this fab icon, we are changing the values. We are changing the values and we can see those changes. So the next thing that we need to do is find a way to click on this button. Okay, we did it because, of course, we have eyes, we have visual instincts. By looking at the UI, of course, we can see there's a button. We can move our mouse and click on it. Okay, so that is our instinct. We can see the button and we can click on it. But when it is in the code, when it is in let's say, for example, let's look at this. Okay, so in here, how do the tester, the Flutter testing tool knows which one to click? Okay, they basically get something like this. I'm not not the byte code, the compile code, but assume something like this. Okay, they will get something like this. So how do they know where to click, what to click, what sort of things that you need to do in a scenario like that. Okay, so there is no way that we can get that running. There is no way that we can work on such a test scenario in our application. So in tester, how do we get this floating action button? Of course, visually we can click on it, but in here we have a reference to this. We have only this reference to our application. Okay, we have only this reference in here. We have this floating action button, and what we have else? We have a press method, we have a tooltip, and we have an icon on it. Okay, those are the only things that we can identify, or we can just point out to this floating action button, this action button. So within the code, we should be able to get a reference to this, get a hold on this widget. Okay, we should be able to uh, okay, give me a second, guys. Okay, so what we need to do is that we need to look into these things and click on this button and get the action down to it. Okay, so we need to refer this button. Let's see how we can do that. Uh, so uh, any questions up until this? How we can get on this level? I mean, at least for this section. So you guys get the idea, right? We need to get to this button within our test case. Only thing that we can identify this button is based on this icon, tooltips, and everything. Let's see how we can get into that. Give me a second. Okay, so we have this challenge. How do we refer to it? So we have helper methods like we had for selecting the text. Okay, so it's easy. We can say find. We have this find method, which will help us finding the matcher to find any widget within our application. And we will simply say, find a widget by its icon. Okay, by its icon, find a widget. So in this scenario, I would say, find a widget by the icon add. Okay, so earlier, you guys can remember, there was this add icon which I changed to home. So that's why the test case initially had failed. So now you guys see why it is failing by looking at this section, by looking at in this code, the tester is finding an icon with the icon that's contained add, but right now we have no such icon in here. So we are unable to find an icon which containing the add button. Okay, so it has the home button right now. So in here, we were unable to locate that widgets. That's why the test is failing. Test is failing because we are unable to find that. So I can do simply just change this to, say, for example, the requirement was wrong or the logic was wrong. It shouldn't be a add button. Okay, I can change back the logic in here, and I can make sure this logic works again. Now, if I run my test again from here, now you guys can see it is not failing again. Okay, it's not failing because it is able to find a widget or yes, at least a widget with the icon containing add. Now it is finding a widget, and what it does is the tester method has methods like interaction methods. Like we have test a pump widget method, that means to initialize the widget, and we have another tester tap method which is simply gonna do is find an icon with the add sign on it or icon containing add sign on it, and using the tester.tap, the found widget would be tapped on it. Okay, so it will tap on this. So that is how a testing framework like the SDK tester is doing such tasks. So first thing that we need to do is find what we want to find the widget that we want to tap on it. It is done by simply executing a find by icon and the icon that we are interested in, and we call the tap method on this found widget. Okay, simply we are tapping like this, like this. Now what we need to do is yes, this this action or this tap action is happened within our application. Now the next thing what we need to do is we need to make sure that we re-render the application. We need to re-render our application itself. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna re-render the application. Earlier we used the pump widget method. Right now, what we're gonna do is simply call the pump method. Okay, it's gonna re-render the application. It's not gonna create the widget from scratch. Okay, we have already created the widget. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna re-render our UI. Okay, as you guys can remember, without calling the build method, the application is not rendering the UI. Okay, so in this scenario, we are not running in the Flutter engine. We are taking control of the widget itself to our hand. So we do not have the control over it. So what we need to do is we need to manually say, okay, now I have done something, re-render the application, re-render or re-render another frame. Okay, so it's re-rendering a frame. So in that scenario, the UI or the widget should look like this. So again, we are writing a test. What is the test? We expect to find a text containing 0, and there shouldn't be no widgets. Okay, find nothing. That means we are expecting no widget to contain 0, but we are expecting to find one widget containing value 1. Okay, so that is the expectation. So now you guys can see we have click on this button. We have click on this button. And once we click on it, what should happen is we expect to find no widget containing 0, but we are expecting find a widget, one widget containing text 1. So that is expected, right? 0 is no longer there, so no widget should be there. But 1 is there, a widget that containing text 1 is there. Then our test case, this one should be true. This is also true. So both of these test cases are executing. That means we are having no issues in executing our test. Our test goes without an issue. Okay. So uh, let's code together. Okay, let's code together. I need you guys help on this. Okay, you can put it on the chat, or you guys can speak up. Anyone want to collaborate? Now I need to now what I will do is we will experiment on this. Okay, so we will experiment on this. Let's say I want to tap once more in here. I need to tap once more in here, and I need to evaluate that test scenario. Okay, I need to evaluate that test scenario. So how you gonna do that? Yes, I am open, all open for yes. So you guys need to tell what I need to do in order to test this scenario. Yes, go ahead. I'll be coding on your instructions. Yes, it's a free space. Anyone can give me the next line of instruction, so I'll be executing that. If you want to speak, raise your hand and I will allow you to speak, or if you want to have it in the chat, just send it to everyone within the chat. Yes. What is the next line to check this state? So I have 2 and I need to check that. How I am going to check that? What is the first line that I need to do? So it's easy. You can find by simply looking at this and you will be able to see. And simply what I did was click on the plus button and I need to test the current state. So what are the instructions that you will give within this test case in order to check this is happening or not? Yes. I'm not pointing anyone else. So you guys have to be first one to give the answer is the place I'm gonna put this. Otherwise, I will be calling out names. So before I do that, you guys go ahead, give some answers. Okay. So I need answers right now. Come on, guys. You can do it. It's easy. It's just simply looking at this and just evaluating your knowledge. Okay. So I'll be calling out name, Imesh. Can you help me with this? Darshi, can you help me with this? Menuja? Yes, anyone? Yes, anyone? Okay. Anybody did not understand this? Please raise your hand. Okay, I did not get this. Raise your hand. I did not get this. I need a more explanation on this. Raise your hand. I need explanation on this. Please raise your hand. So everybody got it? So last time I'm asking, anyone did not get the idea? Please raise your hand. Okay, everybody got it? So everybody who understand the code, please raise your hand. I understood what we are doing in here. So I don't know if you understood or not. I need your feedback, guys. Come on. I understood. Please raise your hand. I understood. Anyone who understood, please raise. Okay. Last time, anyone who did not understood? I did not understood. Hmm. I'm gonna pause recording for now. Okay, we'll just continue with what we have done. Within this section, what we need to do is we will be evaluating the second button click. So it's going to be real simple. First, let's go to the initial state, which is the 0 state. And we have done something like this, at least pumping the widget. And our test case, first test case is going to be something like this, that is 0 and widget containing 0. that is one widget, that is going to be correct. Text containing one, there's going to be no widgets, that is also correct. Then what we do is we click on it, and what we are doing in our test case, it is something like this. So we click on it, and we are manually refreshing, or we are manually updating a frame. Okay, so we don't have to do it in the actual app that we are building, but since we are testing, we need to do that. And the next thing that we need to do is evaluate the second frame. In the second frame, what we are expecting is we are finding text with 0. To find there shouldn't be any text containing there shouldn't be any widget containing the text 0. So we are expecting nothing, and we are expecting a widget containing 1, and that should be only one widget. Okay, so we are clicking the next stage. Okay, so if you are clicking the next stage, again, what we have to do is we have to execute this command. So tester, tap on the widget which you will find by the icon add. Okay, so we have done it, and we have to refresh the frame by calling the test pump method. Then what we have to do is we have to write our expectation, or the test expectation, what we need to do. So we are expecting text. So earlier it was 1. At this stage it was, sorry, at this stage it was 1. Okay, now we need to find a widget which containing the text 1. It shouldn't be there. There should be no, find nothing. That means there shouldn't be any text, any widget containing text 1, and we should find nothing. Okay, there shouldn't be any text. But what we should find is we should find one widget. We should find a one widget which containing the text 2. Okay, so this should be the next test case. So okay, let's execute this test, see whether my assumption is correct. So test is running right around here. Yes, you guys can see the test is running and without an issue. So the second attempt, the second time when we are writing this test, it's gonna be working as expected. So that's how we will be doing this kind of widgets. So this is like an integration test or some kind of widget test that we are doing. In this widget test, what we have done is simply testing on the widget itself. We haven't tested any flows, or we haven't tested any integration with one screen to another, or we will be doing these things in an emulator or something like that. No, nothing. We are testing this completely, loading this. We are loading this widget into our tester, and we are testing the widget out of this. So we are not running this by some sort of emulator, some sort of device. No, nothing. We are simply loading the widget, and we are testing that widget itself. Yeah, nothing goes on. But if we are to test this in a real device, okay, so we are not running this in a real device or an emulator. But if we are running some sort of application, then we are doing a different type of test, which we call an end-to-end test. Okay, we are running an end-to-end test. So we'll be looking at end-to-end test in upcoming lectures, and we'll see how we can get end-to-end test works. And by that time, what we will be using is, we'll not be using something like this test pumper or something like that. We'll be actually deploying the test in a virtual environment, like, or emulator. We will be executing those in a real device, and we'll do the same thing. Like, we'll be clicking the buttons and everything, and once we have done, we can write the same test case, we can write the same test scenarios, and we will get the same output as of this. Okay, so it's going to be simple. It's going to be very visualizing. So in this scenario, if you close this, it's your application shouldn't be running. Okay, if I terminate this app, okay, I have terminated my running application. That means I am no longer running the application still, but I can run my integration test and it is working. Okay, so I don't need a running environment. I don't need any running application instance. I don't need an emulator. By simply recreating my widget using this pump widget method, I can literally create the widget within the code and I can test it. Okay, so there is no interaction going on whatsoever. So I can test my widget easily. Okay, so what are the benefits and the fallbacks of this method? So basically, uh, testing out widgets is good for like very simple and what we call dumb widgets. Okay, that means the widgets that do not have so many responsibilities, something like very simple UIs and very simple interaction, that's kind of things. We can easily test these. We can easily use widget test in order to check whether things are in order. But but in a case where we have more complex ones, say for instance, when you click on that button, it is taking it is doing a background task, or maybe it is doing HTTP requests and getting from values from the server, and we are trying to render those things out. Then those things will not be a very ideal, very suitable test case when we are using widget test. Okay, that kind of test is not suitable when we are communicating with outside world, and when we have a lot of flows involved in. So in scenario like this, the widget test will not be a good addition, or will not be a good thing that we can do. Okay, so remember, the widget test have some benefits, and it has some it has its flaws. Okay, it's not ideal for everything. It will be good for some test cases. It's not good for testing any flaws or something like that. Okay, so keep those things in mind. And any questions up until this? Okay, if not, I'll stop recording.